Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the InnerFight podcast. My name is Marcus Smith. I'm the host of the show, and I appreciate you guys joining me every single week. I appreciate all of my guests as well. And this week, I welcome a guy who is probably another great story of the power of social media as to how I met him. I met him through a friend who we'd been connected through social media for a number of years. We've actually never met the guy that I met him through. And just over a year ago when I was in the UK, I got the opportunity to go and meet him in person. And we went just to have a conversation, just to talk about things. He comes from a fitness background. He runs a gym, but more importantly, he has an incredible mindset. And it's that mindset that I try to tap into today. As you'll hear in the early parts of the show, I actually heard Paul say that he's really done doing podcasts. So it took me over a year to, I think, maybe get the courage or maybe respect his space. And I couldn't last any longer. I couldn't resist any longer. I had to ask him to come on the show. And fortunately, he said yes. This show could have gone on for a number of hours and it would have probably gone round in circles, which as you listen to the show, you'll understand that sometimes going round in a circle is often how life works, and it's a massive positive. But I'm just truly grateful for the insights that Paul gave us, things that he shared, and I'm super, super confident that there'll be a lot of benefit for the listeners today. This week's show announcements, I spoke about it in the weeks leading up to Turf Games, and Turf Games definitely did not disappoint. We had 7 teams out there, 7, not 1-7. Maybe next year we'll have 17, 1-7 teams out there at Turf Games. It was absolutely awesome, from the teens all the way to the elite team, which had in it 3 coaches, Andy, Sandro, and Jess. And then Vic, Holly, and Krios, that's 6, right? Who managed to place 3rd overall, which is absolutely phenomenal. There was 15 teams in the elite category, 96 teams in the intermediate category, and over 50 teams in the everyday category. So it's definitely a thirst for fitness. There are a lot more fitness events coming up. Turf Games will be back similar time next year, we believe. If fitness, working out, if you were down there, if you liked what you saw and you want to test yourself in that sort of atmosphere, or should we call it arena, then there are plenty of fitness events coming up. There is one at the Dubai Muscle Show, or Dubai Health Show, which takes place on the weekend of the 26th. Next weekend, there's also one during the Dubai Rugby Sevens, which is the first weekend of December. If you're interested in any of those competitions, give us a shout and we will let you know how we're getting involved or how you can get involved as well. And it's not just for elite people. That's definitely something that we saw on the weekend. Hop over to InnerFight, the InnerFightWay.com/news, and you can read all about what happened at the Turf Games. And you actually read about all the different things that are going on at the gym in the news section, InnerFightWay.com. Coming up this weekend, we are kicking off, Toby is kicking off the training experience. If you haven't registered, if you're interested in that, if you can't make it to the first one, but you can make it to the others, as I said last week, you can kind of hop in and hop out if you want. Obviously, it's more beneficial that you go to them all. They are not every weekend. Give Toby a shout, tb@innerfight.com. and he will let you know how to get involved. We are just at the end, or coming to the end, if you're listening on Friday morning, of testing week here in our class program, which has been massively successful. We've seen some great improvements and we've tracked all of that as well. So testing week will come back in 12 weeks' time. Be ready, follow the program, follow the class program. We now enter into the next 6-week block. If you want to know more about programming and how we put it together, a few shows ago, I should really know the number, we did a show all about programming and how we put together the class program. But we now enter another 6-week block for that. Some dates for your diary coming up on December the 9th. I believe, is a Saturday. It will be Celebrate Fitness, our end of year community workout that everyone is invited to take part in. And after that, we will be going for some lunch and some end of year celebration together. Venue will be released in a few days, or maybe by next week, I'll know exactly where the venue is and what the setup is. But if you are here on December the 9th, please keep your diaries empty. In the morning, we'll work out about 90 minutes. We'll start about 8:30, and then we'll go for lunch and some celebration at lunchtime into the afternoon. If you're looking for something to do next weekend, if you want trail and you want to travel, head down to Oman. It is the Himam Ultra Trail Race. There are distances from, I think the shortest distance is about 5 or 10K up to 100K. If you've not planned for the 100K, then probably don't enter that, but it could be a nice weekend away. Failing that, Dubai Run is happening on Sheikh Zayed Road next weekend, Sunday, the 26th of November. It is phenomenal. It is the most people that will run on one single condensed piece of highway, definitely in the world, that I've ever seen. I think they had 100,000 people there last year. I think you can do 5K and 10K, all part of Dubai Fitness Challenge. So if you want to get involved in that, it is truly unique. Unfortunately, we won't be there this year. A lot of us are traveling down to the race that I mentioned before in Oman, and there's a lot of other stuff going on, but it is absolutely incredible atmosphere. That's it for this week's announcements. Let's jump into the show. This is episode number 856 of the InnerFight podcast. A warrior mindset with Paul Warrior. Enjoy the show. Paul Warrior, this has been, I think, a long time coming, and I'm going to immediately put the blame onto you, mate, because I think around 2 years ago, I saw you say something either on a podcast or on social media about just not wanting to do podcasts. And normally I would go straight for the jugular and go, I'm going to get him on my show. But I thought, I don't know, mate. I don't know why I had this level of respect. I was like, you know what? No, he says it, he means it. But and I've been making notes for this show. There's not many, but it's been on my mind since that day. So, mate, thank you so much for breaking that and coming on the show. How's things?
Yeah, man, it's all right. It's all right. Always in a overthinking shift about what trajectories and where to go next. So what next not to do for a while.
That's a great start. Mate, I want to start a little bit winding things back. When I did first come into contact with you, and we've actually been on at least one podcast together, which was quite a nice experience. And then when we met in person just over a year ago, what I found incredibly strong about you was your ability to shoot straight and be very clear with your words, and not really in a society these days that seems to care a lot and is worried about the consequences of what people say. You are always very straight. It doesn't mean you're arrogant or abrasive. You're just straight from the start. Talk to us a little bit about that, mate. Do you know where that comes from? And is it something on purpose, or where is it? How do you get such a great sort of personality trait?
I think that's been challenged more over the last year or so. I don't think I've been able to be that person, and I think part of that has been a shift in personal beliefs. And when you shift your personal beliefs, you can reflect on what was right at the time, but isn't right now. Mm-hmm. And again, that's one thing. It's one of the reasons I stopped doing podcasts for a while, because I felt myself saying the same thing, and you say yourself say the same thing 5 or 6 times, you start to question whether you mean it anymore. And that's something that I've really been in kind of that flux with, and the same with this year, particularly with posting, with stepping back from social media as much as I was on it. So in terms of that, I think I had some convictions that I was pretty sure about. Pretty straight talking parents, and was always pretty inspired by straight talking people, Mark Twight being one of them. But naturally not all without their flaws, but with the convictions to say what they meant at the time. and understand that. But I think as we go into an era where we're more socially conscious, I think it isn't as easy to say the things. And I think it's been more imperative that we stop and we reflect on on our truths and values and start to realign our tongues with our hearts and get a sharper way of what to say. Which is one of the reasons I stepped back a little bit and said, I really want to dig deep into my beliefs and see where I can, because I actually want to bring that sharpness back. So that was a long-winded way of saying I don't know where it's come from. It was something I valued about myself, but something I have been concerned that from both society, personal beliefs, and shifts, that actually it's not always easy to be like that. And and if you don't care about the consequences, that's fine, but you have to be aware there is consequences. So yeah, I think you have to get true to what you have to get to what you truly believe, and then you need to speak it into existence. But I do think it's important to speak it into existence.
It's interesting, isn't it, when one of these, whoever it is, releases a new book and they go on the podcast circuit, as it were, and you see them maybe on Rich Roll, on Rogan, on Steve Bartlett. And it's very interesting what you said there, mate, that when you're constantly saying the same thing 4 or 5 times, it maybe makes you double guess if you believe it, if it's the truth, or if it's something that you just concocted and packaged somehow and then put that out. That must have been quite a almost cathartic process, because what you're essentially saying there is what you were speaking about. You started to, maybe, if I got it right, you were starting to maybe have not doubts about, but wanting to dig a little bit deeper into, and therefore the way to do that is to step back, not to charge forward.
In architecture, often I always found that my first scribble and my last finished part of the project would always look almost identical. But there would be a point where that first scribble I thought was absolute nonsense, and it would get scrumpled up and thrown into the back of a drawer or something and be forgotten about for a long time. It would always be subconsciously there. But then you would go through a process of site analysis, investigation. You'd be looking up the history, you'd be looking up narratives, reading stories, and actually your initial thoughts were right, but they need to be refined sometimes. And you'd actually find that you would come full circle, but it wasn't without that process that you truly understood why you had that first scribble, that first intention that was almost so innate. You would sort of scribble it without really thinking what you were doing. You just have a fat pen out and you just scribble a concept. And then, but you would have to go through, and I never understood it for a long time. I was always like, well, I already know what the answer is, but it was like, you don't know why you had the answer. And once you do have it, when you're stood in front of examiners or stood in front of clients and you're trying to pitch your idea and your concept, it's because of the stuff in the middle that means you can come back to that very simple truth, which was a bunch of lines on paper. You can come back to that. So, but if I was quizzed by the same people on the initial sketch, I would have fumbled my words and spoke, inconsistently about why I arrived at that point, because I didn't know. And telling people I felt it isn't always the correct answer they need.
I think that's an absolutely amazing way to put it. And it sort of aligns a little bit with maybe gut feelings as well. Like, you feel something in your gut, but whether to make a decision in a certain way, but you still sometimes need time to understand why you feel that. And it's the same as the example you've used there, Paul, with scribbling something down. It's probably the right thing, but for your own, and also to be able to not justify it, but justify it to yourself, I guess, you need to do that background. And then the whole thing comes full circle, which is now you understand why you got that thing out of you in the first place, which is really cool.
And I think one of the reasons of the kind of with the social media situation is the fact that it's so easy to post that first sketch, when that first sketch is what you should post last in the process.
Yeah.
This is where it came from. This is my gut feeling. This is what created the first step forward in the direction I'm taking, but it wasn't the finished thing. then presenting the finished thing, guiding people through the understanding, and then showing people its origin. Because to ignore your heart is also a bad move, because we all know that when you don't respond to those gut feelings, right? Like, I knew that was going to go wrong. It's pointless saying it afterwards. You have to act, but you have to act with a level of exploration and intention.
You spoke a little bit about your background in architecture, mate, and we're going to get a little bit to fitness later, but you are in the fitness space, and a lot of the fitness space promotion marketing is through social media. And I noticed when you went quiet on social media earlier in the year, and I'm sure other people did. Social media is a big tool in our industry. Used, abused, overused. We could share all of our different opinions on it. But what it serves us in an interesting way, because it enables us to get things, ideas, concepts, and our voice to people that 10 years ago we wouldn't be able to do. It must be quite a big decision, and that voice impacts our business as well. It must have been quite an interesting decision to say, I'm going to step away from that. So do you want to talk us through bits of that process, mate, and how it started, how you felt about it, and maybe where it's taken you?
I was actually, it was a really simple moment. It was when Threads got released. I was already stepping back from it. I was already a little bit unsure about what I was putting out and why I was putting it out anymore. And I felt I'd been sucked into this world where I'd stopped posting what I liked and what I created, and started thinking of creating to post, which really didn't inspire me, because, I wouldn't like to think that like the famous artists of their time were creating these pieces of art because they were thinking, I'm going to get cool shots from this. They weren't thinking from that point of view. They were thinking about beauty in the world and what they were creating and how that would shift. And those pieces of art have can existentially shift people, can seismically change people's lives. And all of a sudden I found myself creating for Instagram. Like, I'm creating content. I was like, well, this isn't something I ever wanted to be. I wanted to create buildings or art or athletes. I never wanted to create content. I didn't want to be a Canva expert or anything like that. I don't use Canva, but that kind of thing. And I thought, when does this stop? When does this race for me to create? You only have, as a creative, I think I'm a creative, you only have so many creative choices and so many creative things you can do in a day. And trying to create 3 a day or 1 a day or 7 a week, that doesn't leave a lot of fuel in the tank. Not if that's not your greatest passion. If some people's greatest passions are communicators, if you're an evangelist for whatever you do, then your job is to spread a message. That's cool. And if the visual component of that is part of it, that's great. Fill your team with evangelists and get that stuff out there. That's not me. When Threads came out on social media, I literally saw, in a space of like this overnight thing, I literally saw everyone jump on it. So if you're on it, I don't mean any insult, but I literally saw everyone jump on it. I realized that no one had probably read the terms and agreements. No one had ever really decided whether it was better. I don't really want to get into a war with whether Zuck or Musk is the better guy, but equally, I felt equally very played. And I thought, without any consequence, everyone jumped on and wanted to be the first person to jump on the bandwagon. And I don't think there's many moments in history where people jumping on the bandwagon was, especially in the terms of world atrocity, jumping on the bandwagon isn't always a good thing, especially when you're not thinking about the consequence. Now, some people might think there's no dire consequence to just writing something on a post and posting it on Twitter or Instagram or Threads or whatever it's called. But I did feel at that moment that none of us stopped and went, hey, are we all on board with this? Or are we just going to eat it up? And I got lambasted with loads of people posting Threads that day. And I just thought to myself, wow, we're really just hungry to be part of this thing without any consequence. And at that moment, I just went, I do not want this to be the main source of my thought process through the day. How does this appear to other people? And what affirmation do I get for this? Because the public affirmation means that eventually, the moment you turn around and say, let's do more of this, it got more likes, and you stop asking the question is, should we post this? Should I present this? Is the moment you answer to other people. And the moment you answer to other people, whether you think the client is always right or the spectator is always right, you have to realize that you have just taken away your own free will in every way, shape, and form. And I felt that being who I am, you would, I am a natural person to want to be liked. I'm people pleaser a little bit, although it tends not to come out like that in the end. But I didn't think I would just stop. I think I could have that intention, but I'd always put one extra hand in the crisp packet, and I thought, you know what, I'm actually just going to step away from this and think about what it is I want to share in the fitness industry. And I decided at the start of the year, I would give myself a quantity of time anyway. And through the year, this was one of the extra pieces I thought it's not away forever. It's not something I'll never not use again. And on my businesses, I do post the odd post. But it was something that I was like, it's going to be a byproduct of something happening rather than an intention of making it for that thing. And it will be back in my life, but when it comes back in my life, it will be very deliberate. I was very long-winded.
No, mate, I think I'm fascinated. I'm interested in this stuff, and I think people that listen to the show hopefully are interested in this stuff. One question that comes to mind pretty much immediately, and I'm not sure how, I think the percentage of people that actually go into their app of screen time when it pops up, whenever it pops up, or if you don't let it pop up, that's probably a good or bad idea on a Monday morning, and it tells you how you've wasted your life or consumed your life on your phone in the last week. Something that I strongly suggest people do. One thing that you'll see is that for a lot of people, and I'm one of those people as well, quite openly, a lot of my time is consumed on social media apps, mainly Instagram. And I was thinking about it when you were talking about it. I wonder if I calculated it over time, where that time would get to, because it's an opportunity cost, isn't it? We can spend 5 hours a week on Instagram, or for some people 5 hours a day on Instagram, Facebook, and Threads is another interesting one, because it's just somewhere else to do nothing really for most people, just to be and just to get distracted. So my question is, mate, what have you done with that time? Because you were on there and you might have spent 30 minutes a day, 15 minutes, but any which way, it's a few hours a week, have just almost been, I won't say gifted to you. You've earned them because you've chosen to say no. But for the last months, have you purposefully replaced that time with something else? I mean, have you bought an Xbox or something, or is it a little bit deeper than that?
Prayer, meditation, and reading. And if my phone time outweighs that in a day, I'm very disappointed in myself.
And that's conscious?
Yes.
Wow. That's nice.
So an ideal day would start with 10 minutes outside, 10 minutes outside, 30 minutes of meditation, some reading, 30 minutes of prayer would be an ideal morning. Means getting up pretty early.
That's okay.
And if I'm covering the morning shift, it will tend to just be it would probably be more like 30 minutes trying to get some of those things done, and then 30 minutes in the gym, and then do something later on. Would be my time. And that's how I wanted it to be. I really wanted to spend conscious time working on getting all the noise out of my brain and trying to filter through where I want to go next year and where I want to go when this year's up. And also making time to see how, when your frequency changes, when your resonance, your attitude to things changes, what there will be there will start to be a tectonic shift in your life, and things will move around. Some things will present themselves, some things will disappear, and you start to watch certain things crumble as other things are erected, and you kind of start to think, well, this is how the landscape is now when I walk through this. And that's something that I've watched happen, and you know, and try to embrace, not always easy, but try to embrace happening over the last year. So yeah, it's been a very conscious decision, not an easy decision, and not a painless decision, but yeah, conscious.
Painless. What pain has it brought? Where's the pain in it?
Well, I mean, in terms of like prayer and reading and meditation, I think it's course correction, realizing like you're 95% unconscious through most of the day. So everything is a response. So again, free will is, you've given up free will, you're going with old habits and behaviors. Like, try and change that and see how that feels. And then try and change, and then see how you are perceived, because not everyone will dig the change to you. Not everyone will be okay with that. And you have to learn to be okay with other people, with people you care about not being okay with you. And that's a consequence. Look back at failed decisions, failed actions, you know, looking back at those failures and taking away any responsibility from anyone else and give pure forgiveness to it, and then taking on the responsibility of that and seeing where where you've gone down certain paths with business, with life, and looked at it and gone, yeah, I knew I shouldn't have went on that path, and now I'm very far away from the north point. I need to redirect myself. And so yeah, that's painful. I think is painful is a couple of things: killing off the version of you which is useless and no longer serves you, because that version's there. You might have already done all of this work. You might be cruising through life, having a good time. That's not to you. But if you find yourself, every morning waking up, taking a deep breath, saying, we're in the trenches again, maybe you've got to make some changes. And so there's the killing of that. And also, if you're a creative like I am, I also have a million dreams, a million ideas, a million ways I'd like to invest my time. And there is a version of Paul in every single one of them. I have to go put the gun to his head and pull the trigger every time as well. So you have to kill that idea because it doesn't serve you. I'm not short of ideas of things I could do. And the fear of the one thing that you are invested in, and the thing that you do want to do and you do want to have, the idea that you're going to put all of it in that means you have to, kill a lot of all the other ideas off.
That's hard.
Yeah, for sure.
That's
it's for
hard.
Me, because I've always had a million ideas. I've always had all these other projects I wanted to work on. Everyone be like, "Oh, you haven't really done anything this year. Are you okay?" And equally, I feel like I'm letting those people down. Not that they're really feeling, not that they are let down, but someone messages you saying, "Oh, you're an inspiration. You were doing all these things." And I was like, well, I did some things okay, but I'd really like to do one thing really well and be proud of it. I really like to narrow my focus. So yeah, I've had to, all those little gifted ideas that were in a box, all those little ideas you've got, where if this doesn't work, at least I've got this. And if this doesn't work, at least I've got this under a box. And at least if this doesn't work, at least I've got this under the bed that's like an idea that I've got going. And it's like, well, actually, you're going to have to just destroy all them, flatline it, burn the boat. There's no going back. And I've had to do that conceptually in my brain this year. So yeah, it's been a year of self-reflection.
If we take it back to one of the points that I started out with there, as far as we use social media in not just the fitness industry, mate, it's used in many other industries as a marketing tool. Have you noticed a positive or negative impact on your business through what you've done?
I don't know what the correlation is between the business and post-COVID. The fluctuations in behavior patterns, whether people at first didn't want to collectively be together, where I think people much more like being much more gather corporately these days. So I think that the in the gym stuff is slightly more successful than the online programming stuff. But I don't put that down to just my absence. And I do think it may have had an impact, but I also put it down to there's some big programming companies out there who are just doing it, and where programming was quite a niche skill set. Also, I can think of 10 programmers just in the Northeast now, who would like see themselves as programmers and have little small businesses or whatever. And the big people that naturally, the way that the world's divided, 20% takes 80% of all the clients. That's typically how it works. And the other 80% are fighting for 20% of clients, and it's a very small niche market. And my reflections on online programming are changing. So in terms of business, there's probably been a bit of a shift, but it was an expected consequence in some ways, and I'm not certain how much of it is just because of not being on social media. But it's not affected the gym in the slightest.
Let's go to the gym, mate. I walked into it around 15 months ago, and we had what I thought I summed it up. I wrote some notes on it and actually sent them over to you. Your gym and the way that you explained it, you were just about to re-affiliate or affiliate Newcastle upon time. But it was called Campfire. And I asked you, why did you call it Campfire? And maybe I don't want to butcher the story. I've got all the notes, but I don't want to butcher it. And it's not actually my story to tell, mate. But you had a gym, you had a space, and you called it Campfire. Why?
Actually, it started off with a trip to Salt Lake City when I'd left a large commercial gym. And I went to Salt Lake City and I met Mark Twight and the Blevinses and all the lovely people around it, the non-profit. Former Jim Jones, which was, some of those guys were part of the Jim Jones collective and trained to 300 people, and, Wonder Woman and Jason Momoa and all the cool people like that. And, Mark's writings was something that definitely were one of the things that resonated with the speaking the truth. His writings are really good, but he also, if you read his writings, you'll realize that he had course corrections along it as well. So I went to listen to one of their talks, and I ended up sitting on my own afterwards. There was this little drinking and eating thing, and I just went and sat on my own in a corner, being a little introvert that I am. And Mark eventually comes and sits next to me, and we're chatting away, and I expressed to him my unhappiness with the fitness industry, because as if I'm going to change it, and a level of grumpiness and just how I was just disillusioned with it all, and how I was out basically, and I was just looking to train myself. And we sat there at the end, and just as he gets up, I'm just getting to leave. He's going off to do his own thing. I went, thanks for chatting to me. He's like, right, go and open your gym now. I was like, this is the last thing I want, Mark. I was like, I'm not entirely sure you heard my story there. And he went, yeah, but everybody needs to come around a campfire. Everyone needs to sit and talk about where they're at. And there's people who need to do that. And that kind of manifested itself as a note in my notebook. I had some other confirmations where other people had just randomly started using the word campfire at me. And it was a reflection of what I needed to do when I got the gym. And when the gym first opened, I missed the original days, because when the gym first opened, we came in, we had a 30-minute discussion, we'd do a training session. The training session would be whilst we're talking about life and things like that. And being able to come around to each other and have a conversation whilst training, and using the physical expression to inform how we would behave when we left the gym. And that was really, really important at the time. And originally when everyone came in, you had to put your phones on airplane mode. There was no photographs to be taken in the gym. There was, it was all done in silence. Not the conversation, but, externally. This is where we were. It was a tool to help you. No one else needs to know you're going to train here. Go back out into the world. And, it was a really good space. And there is key moments, particularly when I have people who are visiting, where that really gets to happen again. I've got a really good friend, Henry, a friend, Chris, some of the guys who I know, we do clothing, Built Up North operates out there, and every night, we still have glimpses of those really cool moments where we get to just have open discussions and have conversations about life. And one of the great things about that, and not to devalue a podcast, is sometimes it's the incidental conversations that happen, the incidental moments, and the things that you say freely that are almost not recorded and might maybe even misheard, that can have such a seismic shift on your life. It's those little things. They're invaluable. There's no value to them, but also you can't make profit from them, and that's what gives them the essence and the beauty. And you always get people where you've had a conversation with them and they'll ring you up and say, just because of you I've opened a coffee shop, or just because of you I've made this big change in my life. I'm like, cool. I don't even remember that specific sentence in a conversation, but I'm so glad that conversation, whatever it did, had something that landed for you. So that's why the Campfire began the way it did. And this conversation, when you contacted me, was actually in the viewpoint of, there is some very big values that I've been sitting with from that time and that experience, which need to be reimagined.
There's a lot of talk in the world these days is about scale and about impact, Paul. And you have a unique skill set, you have a unique mindset, and you're doing things like you just said, you're inspiring people to go out, open the coffee shop, get out of a relationship that they're not happy in, start walking, buy a dog, meditate, pick up a prayer book. We could go on.
I keep telling people not to buy dogs. They keep buying them anyway.
You have this ability, mate, and I'm sure it's fascinating listening, and I'm so grateful that you're talking and we can share this with people at a bigger scale, because you're impacting me because I'm having this conversation, but the people that listen to this show is the scale. And now you're able to create a bigger reach. And we need good people like you that have vision, that have substance, that have the ability to not always talk, but listen, and the ability to draw a sketch and then come back to that sketch, like you spoke about, 1 year, 3 years, or 10 years later, and understand why, and then push that out in the world. So how do you mix that? Like, you can have, and you are having, mate, such a profound impact on people. And there are a lot of tools. I agree with you. Like when you sit in that room, your gym has a feeling around it. I could describe it in so many ways, and you will never get the conversations that you get. But if you had cameras, which we now have the ability in the modern world to have, if people could get sound bites, yes, that conversation might flow a bit different. And because we're recording now, we talk slightly different to when we sit across the table from each other, and we all know that. But what I'm thinking, mate, is that there's so much potential for you to have impact at such a huge scale. And without sounding harsh, it seems like you're moving in the other direction, which I think is amazing as well. But I'm trying to put the two together.
I don't think I'm moving in the other direction. I think I'm reorientating myself. I don't want to not communicate. I just want to find a way of communicating more effectively. For me, I'm a little bit more inspired these days by longer form stuff. So my conversations around who I've been talking to around what I want to do has been much more about how do we do things that maybe have a little bit more meat on the bones. How do we create the work of art that gives something which has a seismic shift, but you can't make 365 of them. You can make 4 or 5. Is a realistic thing. And if you look at works that like You might not love his clothing, but if you look at things like Jerry Lorenzo with what he's done with Fear of God, and he doesn't do tons of interviews, he does a few, and he's on collection 8 now, and his clothes are sold all over the world. Like if people don't know Fear of God, it's usually the one they're kind of the more affordable component of their brand is called Essentials. He's now collaborating with Adidas. He's an incredible influence. But if you look at his photography output from his campaigns, it's an output. It's say 10 pictures, but it's only 10 pictures, and they're all very beautifully done. He does a video, and it's a 3-minute video, and it'll be a ballerina in a space that's run down, and it's beautiful and elegant, and it moves you in a very different way. It moves you deeply, even if you don't like his clothes. It moves you deeply. Everything is getting made with real consideration and taste, and as a result, and it is coming off the back of him being involved with Kanye and Donda and all these other creatives. But if you look, he's like, it's gathering enough momentum that it shifts the way people dress, it shifts the way people consume, it shifts the way people see things with this gradual building and growing of something. And it's really nice to see. And it's not a frantic Instagram account. It's just tasteful and precision, like a David Chipperfield piece of architecture. It's just precision. It's tasteful, and it will move you more than anything else. So I'm not trying to not grow in scale. And that has been a problem for me. I'm not really very good at marketing. I'm usually very anti-marketing. And if something starts building, I'll generally burn it down. But that's not where I want to be. That isn't where I want to be moving forward. So I want to lay proper foundations, and I want to build with that slow, tasteful shift. And as a result, he's shifted culture. He's shifting culture. He's created an incredible name for himself, and he's pulling out incredibly tasteful pieces. And it's not with a bang. It's definitely not with a whimper. And I really admire that. And at the end of it, he has an incredible body of work. And that's cool. And that's really cool.
I think it's refining, and I think you've used that word, so I'm probably repeating what people might have already heard you say, mate, but it's a little bit refining where you're at, taking stock, really understanding. And, does scale mean 3 Instagram posts a day and 7 podcasts a week? Or like you've just said there, does scale mean doing it incredibly well and creating a profound impact? And are you trying to get to the people that want to see new stuff every day?
Yeah.
Probably not. You're trying to get to the people that appreciate what you do at Campfire, what you do as a human, and your ability to have these conversations, because that's actually, it's more understanding and refining, well, not refining, but understanding exactly where your skill set lies. And everyone's skill set is very different.
Yeah. I mean, some of my friends who do some fitness stuff in London, they aren't putting out loads of content, and they're a clothing brand, and they're not putting out loads of content. They're putting out very tasteful content infrequently, and they put out their product launches. And so many people are getting into fitness or around fitness, or buying the trainers that they're wearing, which are running trainers, so they're running more, which is right up your alley. And they're getting involved in that culture, and they're not doing it through a million posts and people saying, they're not even telling people what they're doing. I mean, for the best part, all their newsletters, I wrote all of their programming. And I work with people within their collective, that's where the hybrid programs is generated from, is a sort of byproduct of working with those guys. And but again, they are shifting culture, and they're getting as many, if not way more people training than a CrossFit gym posting 3 posts every single day and reels every single day. We're impacting maybe 50, maybe 100, maybe 200 people. They're wider impact because they're affecting more. They're not just affecting your idea to change. making you want to change. They're making you want to be part of a culture. They're making you want to buy the trainers. It's making you want to look after yourself a little bit more. They're making you want to, and they don't really share all of their followers' stuff. They're very selective about what they share and post. But I know it's having a profound impact. And I know every time I see someone wearing a pair of their tracky bottoms in town, I know those people are going to be getting in the gym. They're going to be doing some dips. They're going to be doing some bench, and they're going to be doing some running at the track. You know they are. And you catch a glimpse of it, like seeing a pair of, F-Light 260s or 230s, whatever they were back in the day, the InnerFight blue trainer that, those trainers, when you see them, when you saw them in airport, you'd be like, that guy knows how to go hard, You would spot it. And that's what I'm seeing now. I'm seeing the glimpse of an emblem on someone and being, their culture's changed and they'll change the people around them. That's a shift. That's a real shift, And people say to me, I want to train like them. And I'm like, cool, just do this program. That's what they've done. Oh, that's based on some stuff I've written for them. All right, okay, but I want to do what they do. And I'm like, yeah, it's just that. But I thought it was going to be different. I'm like, it's not different. It's just that. It's just because it's perception. It's perception. But the key thing is it's getting people up and out.
When I told one of the coaches that works with me that I'd had a meeting with you or come up to Newcastle, he's from Newcastle. He said, "Isn't that guy the hipster of CrossFit?" Which made me laugh, mate. But where I want to go now is, and that's why I'm on quite a light note.
I've never been called that.
I thought you might. Well, you can't punch me through the screen, mate, so that's all good. But you've been around the sport of CrossFit for a long time, mate. You've seen a lot of different things. You've made, as you've alluded to a little bit, you're an artist at heart. You've made programming into an art. You love it. You can feel it off you. Give us a little rundown on where you came from as far as CrossFit goes, mate, and maybe where it's at, and then maybe where we see it going, which I know is probably a whole other show in itself, but it seems like a waste not to firstly abuse you for being the hipster of CrossFit, but secondly, drain your knowledge.
It's literally the most hurtful thing anyone said to me. People say a lot of mean things to me.
Oh, mate, I don't mean it like that.
Nah. I've stopped drinking flat whites, just so you know.
Good.
It's the Cortado now.
Oh, Jesus.
So actually, my journey into CrossFit was again another accidental one. It was based on me looking for Jim Jones type style training at the time, which had a lot of components of CrossFit in it, and I think he did a lot of the earlier conversations with Greg. If you know, like Greg and Mark's story, and then I think they went away. Mark wrote a pretty interesting article, I think, called "There Was No Such Thing as a Free Lunch," which I think pretty much ended their friendship, at least until now. And I love that article. And so yeah, but then I stumbled across it. So I think a lot of people, I think this was another cultural thing that changed the fitness industry, is the 300 movie.
Yes.
So many people now are like classed as like old school people in this. They weren't the old school. There was a generation way before us who were doing it, and loads of generations. And I watched the 300. Then all of a sudden, I thought I needed a kettlebell. And it kind of built on that. I stumbled across this gym, CrossFit Tyneside, a kid called John Wallace, like a 16-year-old little like protege, badass athlete. And I went there. He was built like, he had that CrossFit physique, which is different to everyone else as you've seen before, right? There was no slim waistline anymore. It was like, hey, he's like this little jacked barrel, and lean and could do all these things. We had kegs in the gym. We had kettlebells in the gym. We hadn't had rings or anything. Didn't really exist like that yet then. Weren't really easy to purchase. And I think I was probably one of his first proper CrossFit clients. And I stayed in that and followed the trajectory of the growth of that gym into something that's like a mega gym now. It's pretty cool. And I followed that trajectory as it grew, and eventually became a coach in there. Had the benefits of getting to travel a little bit, to see a little people through seminars. I had this conversation with someone. We had an argument about programming, which I actually didn't know a lot about, but I kind of through architecture understood the principles of what was needed. And we both decided, as a bit of a competition, we kind of bit of an argument, we'd program for a couple of different people, and I actually realized I had a passion and a niche for it. And so I got more involved in the programming stuff. That allowed me to go to places like, I went to France several times to do seminars, went to Switzerland, went to Norway, went to like loads of places to do seminars, to talk about fitness. At one point I was working with people in Senegal, like working with people all over the world like that. And yeah, I just managed to be able to kind of grow a reasonable online, I guess, reputation, and got to be involved in CrossFit in what was definitely felt like the big, large growing spurt of it being, I was there involved in the first Open, the original sanctionals, they were sort of existing as I was getting into it. I was going to be involved in the first Open, got to kind of be through that whole progression of it growing through that, and got to see it happen whilst getting to travel, getting to meet new cool people, and getting to develop the skill of programming. But that was my get into it, really, and watch it grow crazily.
It has grown. Like, I reflect on this a lot, mate, because I mean, I think I first started chatting to one of my mates, opened up CrossFit Gold Coast in Australia in like 2004, and we'd SMS each other stupid workouts back and forward, and there was no Facebook, there was nothing, mate. There was and I think about, in that time, we're talking about CrossFit originally is sort of pre-2000, but I've had exposure to it for 20 years now.
Yeah.
And during that time, we've seen an incredible number of fitness concepts, let's say, or fitness trends come through. Obviously recently a lot of people know F45. There's just been hundreds, and Les Mills did a fantastic job to grow the industry for us, and all of this. But it's one
P90X.
P90X.
Let's go.
And I mean, mate, it would be amazing to see a fitness timeline of fitness concepts. And there's two things, in my opinion, that have remained. And it seems, if they've remained for 20 years, that they will still remain. One is your big box Globo gym. There will always be a demand for it, because that's what our subconscious programming is. And the only other one that remains and will remain is CrossFit, which is somehow mind-blowing when you think about how everyone started and what it is. Are you of the same thoughts, mate? Is the future, like, it's hard to say, is the future bright? I think the future is insanely solid, as the last 20 years have been.
I think I agree. I think it was one of the reasons for affiliating was honoring the educational process that allowed me to do what I do as a career. Honoring the methodology, which I still think is very right. I think the basic principles and the basic methodology, the original journal articles, I think still pretty much bang on. And I think people like community and training, and I like to identify with a brand in some way or another. And I think CrossFit is the only solid foundation to that. I think the future is great. I think the future seems it will go. I think it does seem to be fluctuating, in terms of like affiliates closing versus affiliates opening. It's definitely a different era right now. And I think that's prevalent. I think there's things we could do better as communities and community leaders. I think you're pretty solid. I read some of the stuff you put out, and and I've spoke to you about businesses and about how you get people on board and how you get on people on board with different areas of what you're doing. And it sounds really good. I think it's very difficult for smaller gyms to have a really smart business model without being bigger. I think it's very difficult for some gyms to survive, and I can understand that. And especially in this era, in the short run, I can see the smaller ones struggling, especially in the UK. Because small businesses are struggling in the UK.
Why is that?
Prices are going up in most areas of things like rent, in terms of software, anything you need to buy, the costs are going up. And I think the amount you can charge and it's fair to charge, it's hard to reflect in that. You know?
Yeah, it's tough.
It is tough. It is tough for people at the moment. But, hopefully the good will prevail. And I think being good is difficult because you can be great at what you do, but unfortunately I think you have to be a little bit more business minded, which is something I'm having to upskill myself on. You can't just be esoteric all the time. So you have to. So I think I can't see CrossFit going anywhere. But also I am always excited to see what does pop up and what that can bring to the table. Because what CrossFit's really good at is when things pop up and bring to the table, it usually extracts what's pretty good from them anyway.
I guess, and you mentioned it before, mate, one of those things is obviously High Rocks is popping up and getting everyone quite excited. Yeah.
Mixed thoughts in my brain about that. The good guy and the bad guy.
What's your rundown on it?
I think it's been, if you're doing it, then again, I'll shoot myself in the foot, but everyone's just capitalizing, especially gyms are capitalizing on it. And, I've got clients, I'm chatting to them and I'm just like, I'm thinking of doing a High Rocks. I'm like, just go do one then. They're like, no, I need to train for it. I need to do High Rocks training. I'm like, it's not really been out enough for anyone to understand what High Rocks training is. Just go a bit longer for a while. You work the mid range, you're working the short range, then maybe now work the short range and the really long range. Add some long runs in, add some long cardio equipment in. I don't see it being dialed in enough to truly I do work with some clients and I do some individual High Rock stuff, but a lot of that I program for, I like to do pain training, pain threshold training. So a lot of I like to break that down into physical and positional discomfort. So getting people against, say, front rack kettlebell hold, too heavy kettlebells, put your elbows in your stomach so you can't breathe, hold it, stand there for 7 minutes. Positional discomfort. Real life scenario, you bought too much shopping from the shop and you're trying to get it to your car without dropping it. Positional discomfort. Then there's metabolic discomfort, so i.e. putting yourself in such a higher capacity that you suffer the after effects of lactic as fuel, and you have the horrible burning sensation and you're going to puke your guts up. Or you have the muscular endurance thing where it's, the barbell's so light, but you've got to do 500 reps with it. It's 1,000 air squats per time, you can do it, but it sucks. And, and it's taking components like that. And it's, why would you put stuff like that in? It's because I want people to be uncomfortable and being okay with it, knowing they're not going to die. So when I'm working with the people who are doing High Rocks, I'm working a lot on physical discomfort and then also getting them going long, doing muscular endurance sets of things. But maybe it's just my brain. Maybe other people might need to think and program that and think it's this big event. I'm just nah, let's just give these guys something that sucks. Let's just navigate it towards the target a little bit more. Let's shoot a bit sharper. But I think most people can get through it, Yeah,
it's an interesting one. We had it in Dubai recently, and it's exactly what you said, mate. The next week, everyone's jumping on the bandwagon, and half a dozen people messaged me or saw me and said, "Oh, when are you starting a High Rocks class?" And I said, "Well, there's two components to this. I'll start a High Rocks class if you're still interested in a year, is number one. And secondly, I actually been running High Rocks training for the last 15 years because I have a really strong running program and an incredibly strong CrossFit program, which does quite a lot of those things that you said. You come to my Friday workout, it's all incredibly, it's aimed at putting people in painful situations to build mental resilience. And then, the CrossFit program through the week is ticking off, all the movements that are there. So I'm absolutely confident. And I mean, one of our coaches, I think she placed third pro. So it's kind of a little bit the proof's in the pudding,
Yeah, I've had a couple of podium finishes. Like my team came sixth a few years ago when I did it. Like it wasn't that bad really. That was just when I was coming through my injury, And it was fun, don't get me wrong. And you know what I do like about it is it's drawing people outside of the CrossFit umbrella into fitness.
100%.
Like, that's a really cool thing, right? Like everything that we say or when we like a level of judgment to it, the bottom line is how do we get as many people as we can training and being well?
Yeah.
If we increase wellness and then we can decrease poverty, not us specifically, that's not I'm just the fitness guy. Decrease poverty, like we're in a much better place as a humanity. And and things like High Rocks, which is getting people in who think I can't do CrossFit, but maybe I can do this thing that's going to take me an hour or a couple of hours. This might be cool, and it's not coming in as a crazy high skill thing, because as CrossFit has geared itself to, well, it's standardized itself, which is nice, but it's geared itself more towards the open. So as CrossFit has grown, the athletes and the potential and the capabilities in the gym have increased massively. Things that took us years to learn to do take people like a few months now. However, when people walk in and they've never seen it before, they haven't seen the slow progressions and the progression in skill in the coaching that we can make people do things now. People don't realize that it used to take us months to teach people to do muscle ups or to do kipping pull-ups. Now it takes a few weeks, maybe, if they've got the bare minerals. So like the base minerals. So, when we set a boundary for ourselves, people walk in, they do a random drop in the workouts. What was the CrossFit.com workout the other day? 400 meter run, 50 double unders, 5 wall walks plus 1 wall facing strict handstand push up every rep. I understand that it can be scaled, but I also understand someone walking in the gym and seeing a bunch of people do that is a high entry level, is a high bar. Something like High Rocks comes up and it's actually dropped that entry level and people will do that. And maybe like me searching for a Jim Jones thing, they will navigate their ways towards a CrossFit style of training.
So mate, I like to ask people what they're excited about, and I normally get one thing, but you have a lot more depth. Not that other people I speak to don't have a lot of depth. That's absolutely
those shallow people
slammed everyone. But mate, what are the 2 things maybe right now in your life that you are most excited about or most looking forward to? What really, you've had a big change. It's been a big year. We could have gone into dealing with adversity. We could talk for hours, but I respect your time and I respect the listeners' time as well. So what are probably the 2 things that really get you fired up these days?
I don't know if it's things particularly. I am very aware that how I've navigated this year, not to everyone's cup of tea, but I am very aware that I want to I'm going to set the fire in the campfire again. That's what I'm excited about. Period. Everything else is going to come underneath that. Everything.
That's cool.
So the campfire is, as far as I'm concerned, so in the terms of how I've been trying to, I've had so many components, and it's been hard to figure out. Come back to the original sketch. Is you have a clothing company with Built Up North, you have all of these little things, and everyone's like, you've got too many things going on. And I felt pulled apart in all of them and a different person in every single one of those boxes. So I want to take the strain off myself by narrowing it all down into just being the campfire. And all those things are conversations with myself or other people around it.
That's very cool.
And I don't want the rhythm of what I do in the future to feel like I don't want to be on Instagram trying to ride every wave. I would just want to ride my own wave and ride it well. And so I have some creative concepts about how I would like my output to look like. And I'm speaking to a bit of some people around me. I don't want to say media team because that makes me sound like I want to make media. People who've got skill sets with graphics, skill sets with art. And I want to produce less, but produce it well with meaning and a reflection of the fitness industry and a reflection of the people I engage with in the fitness industry. So, I've got people who are like, been working with this guy who hadn't been able to walk unassisted since 2008. And he's walking now. We did a mile walk last week in 25 minutes, which is pretty cool.
Wow.
So we got a story like that, which is, that's at one end of the story. I helped a guy who told he wouldn't play football again after a hip surgery, helped him do a workout with me with like kick-ups in the gym. I've got people like that, but then I've got friends who are starting their own clothing companies, who are working in the fashion industry, who are working in all these different components, and they're just a minor reflection of the people in me and around me. And they're all not that separated in their ambition, their strive, their vision of being able to see the future, and being guided, and they can be beacons as well. And I'm much more interested in about that isn't an Instagram post. And it's not a typical little documentary style video where I make it look like I helped some guy walk. Like, I don't want it to look like this kind of song and dance sales pitch where I take credit for someone's hard work. I want it to be, in the search tape, because they're all guys, I'll say that was a brotherhood, a discussion. It was the words it was the words and his belief that got him out of the chair. And it's same with my friends with his vision for the clothing company and what they're seeing in their brains, and they're making out nothing. And we're all doing the same. We're transforming ourselves. How do I best articulate that it can impact you? So it's not you pull your phone down once and it's lost in the feed for eternity, because that's not meaningful. That's just a quick dopamine hit in a sea of cortisol. It's one breath out the water before you search for the next breath.
You still, I think you still at work.
Mum wanted to check if I'm okay.
Hey, Mumsy. I love it. I love it. Except he called some guy a hipster. So I'm excited. I don't have the answer fully yet, but I'm much further away in my thought process of where I was, and much nearer to where I think it's going to go. And I'm most excited about being creative in it and making it happen. And I'm not too sure what that looks like. And now I'm setting a big picture of myself, but it's not what I'm trying to do, because I also don't care. I am doing this for me and doing it in a way that I think will honor the people who are involved and around me. And
right, sensational, absolutely sensational. I want to, I think it's right, mate, that to sort of maybe close it out from my side, I share the words that you said, or that I put into some text after we met about the campfire, because I think this brings a lot of things together. And your words into my writing said, everyone needs a campfire. It's a home, a necessary comfort in this crazy life, a place of safety, a place to think, to talk, to listen, to share, to have conversations that inspire change. Everyone needs a campfire. Find yours. You're a legend, mate.
I think that sums it up, mate. Thank you.
You're an absolute legend, Paul. It's inspiring, mate, and it really is. You've served us, and if one person listens or it goes to scale, it's who cares? We've had a good chat, and I really appreciate you, mate.
Thank you, mate.